Hi, welcome to Talking Politics in Western Pennsylvania. I'm Bill Merrell, and we're talking today reality versus what the media is telling us. But first, I want to thank some of the folks that I've been meeting around town who have asked me why I haven't been on lately. And I have to share with you a little bit of my activities because of the fact that it's been fun, educational, and sort of fascinating. But I've got into writing books. And one of the books, if you can see it, is Gardening, Where Dreams Blossom and Weeds Plot Revenge. All right, that'll be one of the books coming out in the next couple months. Another one that my brother and I had the opportunity to co-author is Pittsburgh, The Rivers Tell the Story. It's a history of Pittsburgh, the region from 16,000 BC to the present day, talking about major situations that happened that caused Pittsburgh to be in the mainstay of world activities, which is, like I said, as a social studies teacher myself, it was a labor of love because of the fact that it's one thing that I've always wanted to do was talk about the city that I love. And the other activity that we did, or that I did, was for educators, planning for the unthinkable. One of the things that I've done in my life has been a director of safety for another organizations, and I also wrote safety plans for the Air Force while I was in there. One of the problems with today's educational systems is the fact that they don't do planning that is deep enough to, in fact, plan for everything that could possibly happen. You know, we've seen horrendous fires in California that actually burned down schools. We've seen earthquakes out in California. I was involved in a couple of those out there. The others, the incidents with the guns in schools, the mass shootings have taking place, all the other incidents. This book covers it. And so what we're doing is once again, trying to put this out to educators, especially school boards that in fact are involved. School boards don't understand sometimes that if they don't plan and have plans available to in fact deal with emergencies, they personally can be held liable. And if the plan that they have does not meet all of the requirements of the state and the federal government, then in fact they still can personally be held liable. So this is, like I said, these have been 3 labors of love that I've had over the last few months. Looking forward to possibly doing more. I'm not sure what the topics will be at this point, but once again, a number of people have stopped me and asked me what's going on, and they haven't had the opportunity to see the program, so I wanted to make sure that they understood that this was coming. Another little tidbit that I've done, and I wanted to share it with everybody and hope that more people will get online with it, is that I have fronted Miss Robin Hodgkin Frick as the WTAE Teacher of the Month for the month of May. And I have sent that in, and I would appreciate if others would take the action to, in fact, make that a reality. Robin has been involved in this program for more than the years that I've been doing it, and it's over 20 for me. And she teaches the students how to deal with not only old people like me, but in fact equipment. These folks do the football games and all the sporting activities. So like I said, I would appreciate if other parents, even students, could contact WTAE and back up my suggestion, because I think that's, like I said, it's been something I've been thinking about for years, and I finally got off my butt and did it. So with all of that being, let's go into the slide program. Once again, we are taught to listen to the news, no matter what the news tells us. And we have seen that, in fact, what has come out of the news isn't always true. It's slanted, it's tainted, and in fact, you get tired of listening. Matter of fact, I've actually gone on YouTube rather than listen to the local news. But On January 6th, everybody heard the terrible things that were happening down in D.C. And, once again, they had a committee that, in fact, supposedly interviewed all these people. Now, the problem with it is that Pelosi, Senator Pelosi, in fact, contacted her daughter to, in fact, come and take pictures of this activity. It's an interesting situation because of the fact that nobody knew what was going to happen. And what has come out recently is that Nancy Pelosi and her office turned down the National Guard participation in protection of the Senate. And she also turned down the Capitol Police in a total. They had the regular staff. But here's a comment that her daughter made. Nancy Pelosi's daughter admits J6 was a hoax. You're going to be able to laugh about this one day. If that's not one of the more telling things about the January 6th. Here's another thing. Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol, clashed with police. That didn't happen until the afternoon. This is NPR, National Public Radio, putting that out at 9:30 in the morning. Who told them that? Okay, just because the news tells you something doesn't mean it's actually true. Concealment, removal, mutilation of any documents is illegal. If it's a document like the January 6th committee had, it's illegal to get rid of it, but they diminished most of that documentation. Of course, here's Nancy Pelosi at one of Trump's State of the Union message, tearing up the State of the Union. And that's illegal. Sooner or later, these politicians are going to be held to the same legal statutes that we are. Secret Service says no new January 6th texts are found after records were deleted. It's against the law. These people did it, and nobody is in prison for it. It's disgusting. The Secret Service spokesman last week acknowledged that text messages from January 5th and January 6th were removed after being looked for by the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General. Folks, this is our government, and we're wondering how all this corruption is taking place whenever the people who wrote the laws aren't listening to them. President Trump was indicted for pressuring Georgia's Secretary of State to investigate election integrity in this state. 5 years later, Georgia admits they illegally certified 315,000 ballots in the 2020 election, handing Biden a win in that state. Let's look at deportations. 56 people were shot by ICE during the Obama administration, and you never heard much about it. Fewer than 1 in 10 deportees apprehended near the border fell within ICE's definition of a level 1 priority. Only 9% of the border deportees qualified as level 1, as defined by ICE immigrants convicted of an aggravated felony or at least 2 felonies. Once again, folks, this is your government and the media in conjunction with each other covering up the lies, the distortions, and the absolute untruth. ICE deportations. Clinton deported 2 million. Bush, 2 million. Obama, 5 million. No protest. Trump, first term, 2 million, no protest. Biden, 4 million. Now Trump, 600,000 with protest and riots. This is embarrassing as a country more than anything else. Google News nearly shuts out right-leaning stories. You want to see the distortion of the news? Here's a prime example of it. 314 left-leaning stories were permitted, only 11 right-leaning. What are the eligibility criteria for undocumented immigrants to receive public aid? Basically, it's free. And the sad part is, folks, I'm 75 years old. It's not going to fall on me. It's going to fall on these students that are at this school right now whenever they're tasked with paying $200,000 over their lifetime to help pay the debt that this country has gotten because of these things. Issues with Pennsylvania with illegals in 2025. ICE and federal partners arrest 17. Pennsylvania residents plead guilty to harboring illegals. Owner of Charleroi Staffing Agency pleads guilty to harboring illegals. ICE confirms arrest of 24 illegals in Center County. January 15th, 25, another study by FAIR concludes that Pennsylvania is supporting illegal aliens by giving $938 million for education, $402 million for health care, and general services of $301 million. Pennsylvania has 2,043 known human trafficking victims between 2019 and 2023. This is part of the debt these kids are going to be stuck with in the future. $1,642 million. Let's look at Pennsylvania's debt. All right. The state has been run mostly by Democrats over the last 25 years. The total state debt, and that's supposed to be debt, not Deb, is fixed $56 billion. Now, you probably heard stories up in New York that New York City is way in debt. Well, that mayor just stole from the teachers' pension fund to try to make up some of that money. Now, the teachers' pension fund is in deep trouble right now. Pennsylvania's total debt, state debt, is $56 billion as of 2025. This ranks Pennsylvania number 4 among all 50 states by total debt. It's embarrassing. They just keep spending and spending, and many times for illegals. If you cut out the last 10 years of illegal debt, this would be another $10 billion lower. Josh Shapiro's salary increased to over $250,000, making him the highest paid governor in the country. Automatic pay raises took effect in actually 1995. Pennsylvania base pays trails, Pennsylvania salary base trails only New York and California. The other southwestern Pennsylvania lawmakers earning more because they are leadership position includes South Strabane and Cameron Bartolotta, Republican Monongahela, at $130,000. Now, for a full-time job, you would expect that. You know, teachers in southwest Pennsylvania earn that for a full-time job. To understand Pennsylvania State Senate session, they have 2 sessions a year, but the total number of sessions is 100 days approximately. Pennsylvania lawmakers moonlight as lawyers, landlords, and even pilots. According to the Pennsylvania Philadelphia Inquirer, in other words, they keep their full-time jobs while they're making this money. Camera is making about $1,260 per day in session, and that's not counting her expenses, which are added on per salary or to her salary for housing and food and other expenses while she's in Harrisburg. And you notice I'm taking a look at Camera here because she's up for election. I called the township, couple people, and asked what has she done to make the township better over the last 12 years that she was in office. See that blank screen there? No one said a thing. I mean, literally, they just stopped the conversation. They couldn't point out anything she's done for the community for the last 12 years. Now, let me point out something to you. I was the chairman of the Republican Party whenever she ran originally 12 years ago. I supported her. I contacted everybody I knew, and she, in fact, did win. Now that I've had the opportunity to look back and see what has happened over these past 12 years, contacted some of the people I know in positions, because I was on the state Republican committee. I was on, like I said, this is nothing new for me to look and check on politics. But there's two things that everybody should be paying attention to right now driving around the community. Her signs are not on private properties. They are not, they are along the roads and public areas, secondary roads, just along the road. They're not, people aren't supporting her. As you see down below, the Washington County Republican Party and the Peters Township Republican parties are both supporting Al Buckton. That should be telling you something whenever the parties themselves turn. And it's very important. Let me see here for a second. Okay, no, I want to hold on to that thought for a second, because I'm sure, like me, every one of you have in fact received 8 billion. I mean, I'm talking about 8 billion different things. I'm trying to figure out what camera I'm talking to here. In the mail, okay? And I mean, they're all saying things. Let me see what the... Al Buckton was in a union. As a teacher, I was in a union. I was the Republican chairman, a state committee member. I was on the school board here in Peters Township at the same time I was teaching. The union representative came to me and said, "You have to be a member of the union." Okay. And then she pulled up another piece of paper and put it aside and said, "You probably don't want to do that." And I said, "What is that?" She said, "Well, it's our political action. We're asking for donations." And I said, "Well, you're right." Well, this crew that is trying to destroy Al is blaming him that he, in fact, belonged to a union that supported Democrats. The teachers' union supported Democrats. I was a member of that union. I didn't support what they were trying to sell us. So, like I said, whenever you hear them talk, you have to realize that people don't spend, an organization doesn't spend this kind of money for nothing. If they're going to spend money to any person, especially a politician, they expect their money's worth. Now, let's find out where that money came from. If you look at the organization that wrote this, and that is, here it is, the Citizens Alliance of Pennsylvania PAC. Now that sounds like a really upbeat organization and you can get behind. Let's see who funds that organization. Transparency USA. Don't know if you ever heard of that either. Well, let's look at some of their donors. George Soros. Oh my God. He gave them $1 million. Michael Porter, $1 million. Nina Almond, only $615,000. Jeffrey Yass, $6.6 million. Folks, George Soros should lead the pack here because of the fact that, you know, all the disturbed DAs that he supported over the year that are letting murderers out on the road and without putting them in prison and everything else. These are the people that are supporting her. So start understanding that this is not a good thing for us. If she is being supported totally by the Democratic support organization, and she's supposedly a Republican senator, we have a problem. And you can tell the people that you hang out with. Well, she married a person who used to be president of the Speaker of the House. I'm sorry, not president. Speaker of the House, a Democrat, who was thrown into prison for 2.5 to 5 years for violating campaign and ethics laws. So, I mean, like, whenever you look at her, look at the whole picture. Getting back on the slides now. She says that she supports the decrease in energy. I'm not sure about you, but my bills went out through the roof this winter. Overall costs have risen 30%, and that's not just talking in the wintertime. That's talking year round. The wintertime just gets worse. Electric rates have increased by 20%. Natural gas prices have seen fluctuations, averaging a 25% increase. And this is just the last decade. She was in there longer than this. And these rates, you'll hear on the news today, you'll hear snippets about how this governor is not controlling this. He's letting basically these utilities do whatever they want. Water and sewer rates. If you live in Peters Township, you're not only paying your price for sewer, but you're in fact paying, if you're on the Venetia side, you're doubling that because Monongahela still hasn't done anything to fix the plant. Let's see how safe our tax dollars are here in Pennsylvania. States without voter ID. Now, if you see the take of these states, you'll see one thing in common whenever we get to it. They don't require voter ID. Pennsylvania is one of them. Pennsylvania is one of them, all right? So, if we don't have you voting, but we give you housing, medical, dental, education for your kids, transportation, who are you going to vote for if you're an illegal? You're going to vote for the party who pushes that, and that's not the Republican Party. But keep this map in mind. And also, most of these states will not turn in their voting rules to the federal government. This comes up, as you see in the next couple of slides. Harris won, the areas that Harris won. You'll see on the left-hand side the picture you just saw. These are the states that spend billions and billions of dollars, the darker in the blue and the dark red. And if you look at the map on the right-hand side, these are the areas that Harris won during the election, in the dark red and the blue areas. Once again, if you're going to flood, what most people don't realize, the number of illegals that Biden let into the country was a total more than 38 of our individual states. So they could change any election if they all get support for one group. And that's what Democrats tried to do. They tried to, in fact, overwhelm these areas with illegals. I mean, Texas, of course, the border states, California, these sanctuary cities they had. I mean, I used to live out in California, in San Bernardino. It is now one of the worst places in the country to live. They have highest crime ever. All right, New Jersey. Well, Pennsylvania, we're not doing too well in crime here anymore either. They complain about the Electoral College, and here's the reason why. You see the Harris blue areas there. These are the states that have large populations. Well, if everybody in those states voted one way or the other, then either you win or you lose. The rest of the country's out of luck. The Electoral College, thank God, was put in by very intelligent people whenever our country was founded, and in fact, gave every state a vote. Why are the Democrats trying to get rid of the Electoral College? Think about that. What the media wants you to believe. Every place is blue, Democratic. And the reality is, as you see on the bottom, like I said, everybody should be questioning everything the media tells us. The total casualties in the Iran conflict. Being retired military, this is very important to me. Killed 13 military members, my brothers and sisters. Wounded 380. But look at the same time in these two cities. Chicago, 101 people killed. Wounded, 259 during the same period of time, and that's not supposed to be a war zone. And their mayor and their governor says that you shouldn't be listening to that because the city's safe. I just heard yesterday in the city of Pittsburgh, down at the Point, since the beginning of the year, there have been 1,000 incidents. Think about that for a little bit. 1,000 incidents of police response to activities that needed stopped. And that's our city. It never used to be like that. You used to be able to walk down the street and feel very comfortable. In LA, 50 killed, wounded 104. Removing gun-related homicides in Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and St. Louis would drop the U.S. to 189th out of 193 countries in gun violence. Think about that for a minute, if you would. You just get rid of these 5 cities, and by the way, they're all sanctuary cities, and each of these cities have one thing in common. Each one is led by the Democratic mayor and the Democratic Party. We're going to stop there. We'll come back on the other side. And hopefully this has been interesting enough to keep you involved. It's sad. Like I said, I'm going over things that shouldn't be. But we'll see you then. Well, thanks for coming back. Once again, we're talking politics in Western Pennsylvania, and we're talking the reality versus the media. See what's exactly going on. All right, opening up the second half here, let's go with the first one. This has been always an interesting part because state of Minnesota have been a lot of riots and things and activities that, in fact, cause problems for a lot of people. 2 people were shot there. Okay, and anytime you lose a life or anytime somebody gets hurt, it's terrible. All right. Now, the problem that I have is the fact that Tim Walz, the governor, in 2020, wrote the statute: if a driver accelerates towards an officer standing in front of the vehicle, this creates an immediate life-threatening danger. The officer does not need to wait until impact. They can act based on the apparent intent and proximity, which means the officer, who, by the way, has had a number of surgeries after the incident that she ran into him, did shoot. And in fact, I guess each one of us has to put themselves in that position. If we were officers and someone was driving a car at us, what would we do? Okay, the voters' rules have been very important, and we'll take a look at this one from Texas. Over 6,500 non-citizens were on the rules and removed. 6,000 voters with felony convictions, which aren't allowed to be. 457,000 deceased people were on the rules to vote. Now, here it is. Whenever I die, please don't put me on an election. I don't want to run for office. I don't want to vote for anybody. Over 134,000 who responded to an address confirmation notice that they have moved. 65,000 voters who failed to respond to a notice of examination, and 19,000 voters who requested to cancel their registration. And that's just Texas. Oregon was caught with 800,000 ineligible voters on their rolls. These are people that are voting for what we're going to spend our money on, what we're going to spend our future on, and they're not necessarily allowed to vote. Let's look at civil rights history for a while. 13th Amendment to abolish slavery. 100% Republican support, 23 Democratic support. 14th Amendment gave citizenship to freed slaves, 94% Republican support. 15th Amendment, right to vote for all, 100% Republican support, 0% Democratic support for the 15th Amendment. You know, the history of this, if you have to look back at the 1968 Chicago election, will tell you everything you need to know about the parties. What about Congress? Yikes, in 2020, Chuck Schumer criticized Trump for not ending the Maduro regime. He hasn't brought an end to the Maduro regime. Now Trump's ended that regime, and Schumer doesn't like it. He attacks him for it. And this was only a few years ago. Let's see how we got here with Iran. Hillary Clinton supplied Iran with uranium to enrich their nuclear program. By the way, this is a family thing you'll see in a minute. Barack Obama gave a plane load of $1.7 billion in cash so they could fund their nuclear program. Joe Biden unfroze $16 billion in funds for Iran. And they blame Trump on this. But now, let's look at this. 5 presidents promised to end Iran's nukes. So why is the outrage now? Bill Clinton, Iran's appetite for acquiring and developing nuclear weapons and missiles to deliver them has only grown larger. We have tried to stop this quest to acquire weapons of mass destruction. George Bush, for the sake of peace, the world must not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Obama, America is determined to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, even though they paid for it. That was funny. Hillary Clinton. Here is my message. This is whenever she ran for office, okay? Ran for the president. This is my message to Iran's leaders. The United States will never allow you to acquire a nuclear weapon. Now, once again, remembering that she gave them nuclear materials. As president, I will take whatever action is necessary to protect the United States and our allies. And Joe Biden, who gave them $16 billion released funds, we will not let Iran acquire a nuclear weapon. Period. Period. End of discussion. It will not happen on our watch. And none of them did anything about it, but they're all complaining now. Understand how Bill Clinton's involvement with the North Korea's nuclear program. All right? Bill Clinton gave them 2 nuclear plants. And one of the biggest problems we have in the world today is North Korea with nuclear weapons. And they have missiles that, in fact, can hit the United States. But the history tells us where the problems came from, and they're mad. These same people are making comments about our military action in Iran. It's disgusting. Once again, Clinton's nuclear deal with North Korea, 1994, agreed framework that they weren't going to do it. They weren't going to look for nuclear weapons. Well, that didn't work out well for us. They have them. Just food for thought. Where are all the Minnesota parents screaming about losing their daycare? You notice you never hear anything on the news about it. ABC, NBC, CBS, they're not up asking what their people are doing now because all these places have been shut down. $18 billion in fraud have been found so far just in Minneapolis. The audit of the blue state of California assigned $70 billion lost to fraud. And Maine is a piker at this whole thing. They're only looking at $180 million in a short 2025-2026 period. You have to wonder how this country got into debt and why it's not in more debt with frauds like this taking place. Now, here's the ambassador from Somalia at the UN, and he's running a daycare in Minneapolis. You know, this shows how absolutely rampant this has been up there. More connection to fraud in Minneapolis. The state attorney general was overheard on a leaked audio that he was going to protect the people committing the fraud from the investigations. The sad part is none of these people were in prison now, yet. Obama's campaign got busted for illegal foreign money, and now a rapper is going to prison over it. Pras Michael from the Fugees is serving 14 years after being convicted of funneling foreign money into Obama's 2012 campaign. But Obama didn't return the money. So why is no one investigating Obama? If it was Trump's campaign, every news person would have a camera up everything. Now, this is utterly disgusting.
I'm Jake Tapper. After nearly 5 years of investigation, the FBI finally announced that they had arrested a suspect accused of planting pipe bombs near the Republican and Democratic National Committee headquarters the night before the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack. Brian Cole Jr., a 30-year-old white man from the D.C. suburbs, is charged with transporting an explosive device in interstate commerce and with malicious destruction by means of explosion. CNN.
Now, I'm not sure. I'm a white guy. He doesn't look like me, but I'm just going to go, flip a coin on that one. This is the media trying to tell you things, and they can't even get basic things like this right.
You use the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented.
Can you imagine if we could go back in time and somehow or another find like Chuck Schumer or Biden talking about illegal?
Can you scare an employer in this country, whether he's an agricultural worker or a housewife, into not hiring an illegal? You got 11 million illegal aliens here. They have to have a way to earn their way into the deal. This is an amnesty. They're required to take 11 years' worth. They pay a fine. They got to learn to speak English. They got to pass tests.
Now imagine if we could find Chuck Schumer saying the same kind of stuff.
When we use phrases like undocumented workers, we convey a message to the American people that their government is not serious about combating illegal immigration.
That was 2009.
It makes you really wonder what side of their face they're talking out of. Let's look at the SAVE Act real fast, okay? It requires proof of citizenship to vote. I mean, anybody who votes has to take their ID and register to vote. People registering for federal elections would need a document, proof of citizenship, such as passport, birth certificate, naturalization papers, or others government-issued showing citizenship. Aims to prevent non-citizens from voting. Well, that makes sense. Requires states to verify voting citizenship. That makes sense too. All of these things make sense. According to the Harvard poll, 68% of all Americans want the SAVE Act. The argument from the opponents on it is it could make registration harder for eligible voters who lack easy access. Well, I'm telling you what, if you live in this country and you don't have a birth certificate or your passport or some other documentation that shows you're a citizen of something, you should get it. And blacks have been held as this will disenfranchise them if you in fact do this. Most of your black leaders have come out and said, stop doing that stuff. We don't need your protection on this because we have documents that we use every day. Let's take a look at that. Places you need an ID if you're going to buy alcohol, opening a bank account, applying for food stamps, applying for welfare, medical aid, Social Security, renting or buying a house, renting or buying a car, flying an airplane, getting married, getting a divorce, buying a gun, adopting a pet, applying for a hunting license, buying a cell phone, picking up a prescription medication, riding the subway in New York City, taking out a book at the library, driving a car, attending school, buying certain cough medicines at the drugstore. I was stopped and carded the other day when I was Giant Eagle because I bought a cough medicine. Now, I'm not saying that, I may look younger than I am, but I don't look like less than 18. Scary. With nearly 500,000 registered California voters disqualified from jury duty in 1 year because they were not citizens. Why are they on the voting rolls? If they can't do that because they know who they are, throw them off the rolls. It's a simple process. Now, here's the thing that strikes close to my heart. Clinton, Somalia, he left 18 soldiers there to die. Benghazi, Obama left 4 to die. Biden's withdrawal left 13 troops at the end. Now, here's the part that gets me. Not one American serviceman or American was touched while Trump was in office. Because what he did was he was at a meeting with the opposition, and he basically told them, you leave all of our people alone. And he showed the guy a picture of his house. He says, we know where you and your family live. And they never touched anybody until Biden took over. Now, in the military, I was in charge of what they call base recovery after attack. The military is trained to blow up everything. If you can't save it, you blow it up. You blow up the planes, you blow up the helicopters, you blow up the tractors, you blow up the guns, you burn them, everything. Biden left $8 billion of weapons, helicopters, everything in working order when we left. It was disgusting. Now, the media tries to make a big thing. We had a plane go down in Iran, and a couple of days we didn't hear anything about it. Trump made sure that our man got out. That's what we wanted as military members, that our government wouldn't forget us, and he didn't. Kennedy gets a lot of problems over shots. Okay, and here's something that I found very interesting. Child injections in the USA versus the EU. From birth to 18, European countries require 11 injections for children. The United States requires 72. What is so terrible in this country? Or is it just the politicians get a ton of money from Big Pharma if they're selling and pushing this stuff? Money doesn't talk, folks. It screams. And these politicians look for it every day. The rich don't pay their fair share. We don't need any oligarchs. More taxes, more spending, more power. federal tax income, the top 1% pay 40% of America's taxes. Think about that. The top 11% spends the vast majority of it. Think about that. It's just, what's left, they pay 70% of what's left. Nearly half of Americans don't pay any taxes, or they pay very little. Now, what's interesting about it, the people who are always blaming are the ones who made up the rules. There's Bernie. Let's look at his real estate holdings. He has a home in Vermont, approximately $600,000. A row house in D.C., approximately $1 million. A vacation home, approximately a little bit over $500,000. I don't see him changing the laws on people who, in fact, are paying this money. I don't see it. And I wish somebody would tell me how they're going to raise. And she is an individual that is interesting because all of a sudden her $30 million vanished. Now she reported it, and now she reports it it was never there. Once again, politics has been something that I've looked forward to and been a part of for a large part of my life. But seeing that this group constantly complains that they don't have the money whenever it's those states, California, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, that in fact have been caught with this fraud. And they're not talking, $18 billion when you're looking at trillions of dollars in debt doesn't mean a lot. Except for the fact that $18 billion could put everybody that has ever went to school at Peters Township through college. Think about that one, all right? And probably many more schools. It's embarrassing. It really is. Self-protection, Second Amendment. They complain about assault weapons. Under the Obama administration, to address safety concerns, the government had ordered M16 or assault weapons as personal protective equipment. The government changes their tune whenever it suits them. If they said that they asked for assault weapons, and by the way, this was going to the IRS. These weapons were going to the IRS. Why do they need assault weapons or M16s? It's amazing to see how our country's gone down the tubes. This is talking politics, so we're going to talk local politics right now. These are the members of Congress who voted against disclosing the sexual harassment claims that Congress has been covering up for years. Nearly all members of Congress, 357 Republicans and Democrats, don't want taxpayers to know which members have used taxpayer funds to pay sexual harassment claims. Isn't it nice that they have set up a fund that they can pull on to pay attorneys' fees and everything to fight people who blame them? And we're not allowed to know, but they're our tax dollars. An untold number of members of Congress have spent a combined roughly $17 million of taxpayer money to settle sexual harassment claims made against them, according to the House records, U.S. Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky. And folks, I'm not pleased to say this, but we had 3 of our local members vote to hide these records from the public. Summer Lee, who's always out there talking about open everything. DeLugio he was a professor at Pitt or associate professor at Pitt. And Guy Reschenthaler, which I'm really surprised because he was an attorney and another person I supported in the past. Like I said, you have to look at the underbelly of politics to see what's really happening, and this is disgusting. Legislator Misconduct Database. And anybody can follow this on this GovTrack U.S./misconduct. And you see here in 2020s, the crime has gone down, or at least maybe it's not being reported as much. But the sexual harassment crimes, the ones in red here, have gone down a little bit. The ethics violation are keeping pace with what they had in the past. The other crimes is the part that's interesting. To see how many politicians in the federal government, and you can, by the way, if you look at this site, you can also see the state government. But to see how many politicians who are sitting in Congress right now who have actions against them for child abuse or spousal abuse or anything else, DUIs or anything else, it's it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to see that these people are being paid well and they're not doing a job that we paid them for. Noteworthy criminal misconduct that's happening right now. LaMonica McLeaver, assault charge. Corey Mills, Health Ethics Committee. Kat, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that last name, she's been indicted. More information on the state and political, once again, can also be found on Ballotpedia. Memorial Day is coming up. Being a military member, and hopefully everybody else will pay attention and keep Memorial Day in memory of those who have sacrificed, the ultimate sacrifice for this country, and the families who live with their loss. I'd like to thank all of these groups. I don't pull this information just from one source or anything. This is one of the reasons why it takes so long to get these programs put together. I searched a number of different sources and make sure that they have duplicate from somebody telling me that, yeah, that what they said was right. So once again, you have this. I was hoping that this would be broadcasted prior to the election by more than a week, but we only have a couple days. But anyhow, please pay attention. And I want to reiterate one more thing. When you're looking at the Senate between Camera or Al signs are mostly on people's properties, which means the people are supporting. Camera signs are in public areas or along some back roadside somewhere where someone stuck a sign. I have not seen one camera sign on people's properties, period. So keep that in mind when you go on Tuesday to vote. Please go to vote. This is a midterm election, and these people, the good people of Pennsylvania, should be supported by good people in the House Senate. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Look forward to the next time for Talking Politics in Western Pennsylvania.